Terry, this is my 10th Tuesday trace. So far I've always prepared a script. I've always had like notes and I've researched my co-host. I don't think that's necessary. And I think people are kind of tired of hearing me brag about how V1's the #1 video analysis software company in the world. We have the largest tour model database. We have this really amazing partnership with Boditrak, and you and I get to sell and put really cool technology in the hands of all these golf instructors that have joined us. So thank you for being here tonight and supporting me and joining me for the 10th Tuesday Trace.
Number 10, lucky number 10. Hello, Larry H. in Kansas City.
Awesome. Yeah. Hey, Larry. Hey, Bob, already carrying on about Jake. So, Terry, we're going to sort of jump right into it. I expect that we're going to try to keep this tonight all about the basics.
I want to get on point. Where's the presentation?
It is ready to be pulled up. Anna is going to share it. So we're going to start right in. And you guys, please remember 2 things. Put questions in the chat. I will interrupt Terry and we will answer as many as we can throughout our presentation of Boditrak basics. We will also be giving away an iPad and an iPad tripod at about 7:45.
But we're going to get more than the basics. We're going to, Braven asked, other people have asked. I'm going to give them the foot patterns on the verticals on the DVFs. And I'm going to give you what I know. And let's go.
Let's go. All right. So Anna is going to do a screen share of a deck that we have prepared. And Terry, we're going to kind of wing this and talk through each slide. We have some things we're going to pull from other sources. So we're here, V1 Sports pressure mat powered by Boditrak. This is all about the basics. Next slide.
Let's define basics. Grip, stance, setup, backswing, downswing, the 5 fundamentals of golf by Ben Hogan. Today, we're going to be talking about the key fundamentals of pressure mapping. No matter what else you do and learn, these are the fundamentals that we've seen to date, and these are the ones that have been consistent since I started, which is a decade now in pressure mapping. So let's have at it.
All right. I'm Mandy. I'm sales manager for V1. You are looking at Terry Hashimoto, my good friend, my partner, the partner in crime, Boditrak, king of pressure. If you don't know Terry, please stay and learn something from him tonight, because if you don't know him, you should. Okay, next slide. Okay, what is the pressure mat? I'm going to read this, Terry. I just want you to elaborate. It is a mat that uses Boditrak state-of-the-art pressure or sensor fabric to measure pressure, vertical force, and velocity in the golf swing to help coaches and athletes better understand mechanics and improve performance. You will hear Terry say DVF. That is dynamic vertical force. That is the shortcut he uses for the term vertical force. Well, Terry, you want to elaborate on what is the pressure mat?
Pressure mat is 2 layers of cloth designed in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, with a conductor in the middle of it. And we simply measure the conductivity of electricity between 2 layers of cloth. And we take the average of all the pressure both sides, and that's your COP, and as created by gravity. So next slide.
Terry, can you stand anywhere on the mat to get pressure?
You can. You can stand anywhere on the mat. It doesn't matter. V1 has a beautiful centering feature. So we found out early is that we couldn't get people to stand at the same place twice. And it was very frustrating because some people would stand at the front of the mat or the back of the mat. And back then when we started, we didn't have an auto center feature. We eventually came up with one. It was a little tricky. V1 came up with their own solution, which was much better than ours. And it really makes life easy so that you don't have to have the golfer stand in a certain spot at any given time.
Great. Okay, you guys, the pressure mat connects to V1 Pro software. It connects in 2 ways. One is a mobile connection. When we say that, we mean that you can connect your pressure mat out on the range or in a sand trap or anywhere you might want to be, an airport, a dance studio, a basketball court, with a V1 Pro device, either on a mobile or a studio. For mobile, that means iPad, iPhone, or Android. I went through and did a screen recording to show how to connect it. I think Anna's going to play that.
What's really cool too, if you don't mind me adding, Maddie, this is the thinnest pressure mat on the planet to date. It is less than a 1/2 inch thick. It is about 3/8 of an inch thick. And you can, if that's too thick for you, you can actually take the top cover off and put it underneath a golf mat, like a hitting and driving range mat, and it'll last just fine. You have to be careful on how you where the cables come out so that you can plug it into the battery. But this is the thinnest pressure mat on the planet, and you do not have to cut a hole in your mat to insert it into your mat, which allows you not to have it in a fixed position. And we're not naive. I'm a teacher myself. We don't always use the pressure mat for all of our lessons. If someone's just getting a lesson on grip stance alignment, for example, you can still use pressure, but you may put it aside to let someone else use it for chipping or putting. So it's the only portable and really affordable pressure mat that is really a convertible of all the pressure mats in the game today.
It is also 9 pounds. I also take it on the airplane with me all the time. I think I've had it on, I don't know, 12 flights this year. So it's extremely portable. Okay, we're going to show how to connect it via mobile device.
It's so easy. All you have to do is click.
Easy. You have to connect it with the Boditrak Wi-Fi. Is she, Anna, are you locked up?
V1 Tower, this is Cessna 182 Golf Quebec, Quebec. Can you open the damn mat pressure pad, please? Must be frozen. You want to show them how to do it, Mandy?
So we could do, I want to show the desktop and the mobile connections because I've had a lot of people ask me that. And I'm just getting to a...
Here's a battery pack. You take that battery pack and you plug it into the pressure mat. If you're having troubles while you're doing it. This is the portable pressure mat that I travel with. This is actually a wheelchair cover.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's a wheelchair cover. They use it for measuring the pressure for ulcers and, God forbid you're in a wheelchair or for your back. Spinal cord rehabilitation. This is also a T10 chip. It's built right into the sensor. So this is a portable, really fold-upable. I take it and travel with it. You just plug it into the battery pack. When you plug it into the battery pack, the lights will go on to the battery. Batteries are good for at least 12 hours, and we've tried them for longer. Then you connect you go to Wi-Fi, you connect to the BT, whatever number that it is, and then here you go. You plug in the password Boditrak, Boditr, with the @ symbol K. Open up the V1 app. Boom, you're good to go. Connectivity is really an amazing thing. That's something that I'm so proud of what V1 has done.
Yeah, so here's, Terry, here's a screen recording of the mobile that basically you just said. I think Anna got it pulled up. This is my iPad. So Anna, can you play that? I don't think we're getting the audio. Basically, I'm going to open my V1 Pro first, and then I'm going to navigate to my settings, and I'm going to locate the Boditrak Wi-Fi connection. You'll see it right there with the BT. Then you enter the password, which is Boditrak, BODITR @K. Now join. And hit join. And then you just have to go back to the app, the V1 Pro app, and you'll see the word pressure shows up in your video, and you'll have a pressure graph. There we go. Okay, I'm going to show everyone how easy it is to connect via V1 Pro Studio. Have a great day. So you guys, I've opened my V1 Pro. That's my camera, my face on camera. I have my mat set up behind me. You'll see it. And you will see that in my software, I have no Boditrak connection here, okay? So I'm going to exit out. And I'm going to plug in my mat. So I'm going to take my mat. I'm just going to plug it in. And then if I go back to my V1 Pro software, we will have pressure. It is connected because I can see the same serial number that showed up in my Wi-Fi. It's very dark in my apartment, but But you'll see if I stand on my mat, there it is connected. So it is literally plug and play. Okay, so that is our connections for mobile we're connecting mobile and desktop. All right, Anna, what's our next slide? Okay, the 3 graphs, Terry. One is the pressure graph.
Yeah, the COP, we've talked about this before. This is the average of all the pressures between both feet. No matter what we do, and we're going to talk about the velocity chart today and the dynamic vertical forces, whatever you do with your velocity and or your dynamic vertical forces, this will be the sum of all those parts. So at the end of the day, this trace reflects exactly what you're doing. The other parts sort of dissected, graphs dissected, but this is absolutely pretty much all you really need to use. A lot of questions about DVFs, we're going to answer them today. But this is the very first chart that will make the most sense.
Okay, next slide. The next chart is the velocity chart.
I was just reading that question. The velocity chart is, it breaks the CLP chart into its lateral motion and the heel to toe motion in the speed. So there's a direct correlation between how fast you move laterally in distance. You can overspeed, you can get too fast, you can be too slow, which is more often the case. And it's very overlooked how fast you move from your toe to your heel, in particular at the breaking point just prior to impact. So a lot of people will just trap the pressure in the lead toe and clear. The speed at which you move from your lead toe to your heel, your lead heel, is actually quite significant. Not a lot of people talking about that right now, but we've looked at it very carefully. So this breaks up the CLP chart into its two components, the lateral and the heel to toe. And if you forget the colors, the lateral is marked on the top right-hand corner, and then the heel to toe is marked in the bottom right-hand corner. And then it's in relation to impact. So you set impact, there'll be a green line somewhere vertically in there, usually underneath that red line. And then what we do is once impact is connected, we give you a peak velocity. In this case, that peak velocity says 80. It connected the highest peak to, so at that point, you're moving the fastest laterally. Why is that important? Because when you slow down laterally, you're beginning to brake on your lead side. And that's the beginning of when the hips start to rotate the quickest.
Okay, I'm going to interrupt you really quick for 2 questions. David, if the mat is connected to the Boditrak Wi-Fi, you film your swings, and that when you get back onto Wi-Fi, if you walk into any sort of Wi-Fi area, your swings will send to your instructor that you have in your outbox automatically. So you can still capture them even though you're connected to the mat. The second question, Terry, is definitely for you. How do you measure or see lateral torque and launch?
We don't measure torque, and I don't know what you mean by launch. Torque is a calculation, and I don't know how to use torque, to be honest with you. I know how to generate torque, but I don't know how to measure it effectively using a pressure mat. And some people have tried to explain it to me, and I did try to listen, and I did understand what they were saying, but I don't know how to effectively use that for not only great players, but I don't know how to use it for the average golfer. So to answer your question specifically, we don't measure torque. Nobody does. It's a calculation.
Thank you. And I agree. I've had one person ask me about torque in all the conversations I've had about this, and no other instructor that's using this on a daily basis is
the other
asking.
thing about if you're going to use torque, and let me just explain something, because my boss Rob Golden, who's a genius, he's the guy that started Vista Medical, that gave me the opportunity to build Boditrak pressure mat. If you're going to use torque, you're going to need to understand shear, and you're going to need to understand the correlation between the material on your shoe and the ground that you're standing on, and also the surface type, be it moisture, be it dry, be it whatever combination. It might not be just grass. It can be you can be standing on asphalt if you're like literally on a mat that you're a golf mat. So if you're going to want to use torque, you're going to have to understand shear, and you can't measure shear. I don't care what you do.
Okay. Maybe that launch question was whether or not we're capturing launch monitor data. Of course, we're not doing that in the video analysis software, although we are about to integrate with Foresight. So we will have that data presented in the video analysis with the Boditrak data. So maybe that answers that question.
And that's a good thing, to have that integration. And I salute you for doing that. We have been working with integrated partners for a long time. So good for you for integrating with Foresight. But typically speaking, in all the best facilities that I've been, they will keep it separate for a whole bunch of reasons. One, not to confuse the customer or the student, and number two is not to confuse you.
Yep.
But let's go on to
okay. Really quickly, is the velocity in centimeters per second the degrees of hip turn per second? Question from Al Marn.
Say that again.
Is the velocity in centimeters per second the degrees of hip turn per second?
No, it's the pure lateral speed of the trail to the lead side or lead to the trail. If it's a minus, it'll be lead to trail, and if it's a plus, it's trail to lead. So you can have a negative peak velocity where you're going so fast backwards prior to impact, like if you're in a Z-trace situation. So you could have a max, you could have a peak velocity that is sometimes negative. It's not a good thing. It's not what you want to achieve. But we don't measure the hip rotation. You'll need the speed of the hip rotation. You'll need 3D for that. And when we get to slide 7, you're going to see a combination of 3D and V1 together today. But no, actually hip rotation would be a cool thing to measure, because we do know that at impact, for a good player, it's between 30 and 40 degrees for the biggest hitters, and also to the speed and timing of when they begin to rotate their hips. But we can precisely begin to tell you when the hip rotation occurs. It's at precisely peak velocity, because when you slow down laterally, the rotation of the hip and that it speeds up.
Okay, cool. Pete Dooley's asking about vertical force. So here we are at dynamic vertical force, the speed measured laterally and heel to toe during the golfer swings. Terry, tell us about this third graph. It's challenging to me.
We've always been able to measure vertical force. I think it's been misrepresented by a lot of different people. It's not really a force up, it's a force down. And it's that down pressure that forces the foot to go up. You can't jump up without pushing down. Try it. Good luck on that. I think Chris Como did a video on that a long time ago, and it was a pretty good video. In this graph here, what you're seeing is the total on the left and the right. So you've got the lead and the trail. If you forget which color is which, it says the blue in this one's the lead, trail's the yellow, and the total's the orange. So when you stand on the pressure mat, we give you a value of 1, and it's a relative value each foot, each side, and the total is relative to 1. So most golf pros, touring pros generate it, and this number will really vary. But if you're a lateral player, 1.25 to 1.4, 1.5 is what you'll generate vertically. If you're a very much rotational player, big hip turn, fast hip, etc., you could generate 1.5 to 2.5 to 2.6, even higher. So the type of vertical forces that you'll generate depends on the type of player that you are, and it is possible though. In particular, I've noticed with older guys like me, we use too much lateral power. So sometimes it's not bad to get an old guy like me to get a little bit more hip rotation, which will actually will generate a little bit more vertical force.
Nice. So Terry, we just talked about the 3 graphs. This is the data that's presented to us from the Boditrak mat. There's a really interesting question in the chat window, and I'd love for you to answer it. How does this make your golf game consistent?
Well, the trace makes you consistent. If your trace is not consistent, you won't play well, because basically what you're seeing when you look at the trace is the flow of electricity between your feet. So if your trace is straight back and straight through, like that, can you see that straight back, straight through?
Looks
Or
linear.
that's linear. Or if it's a zigzag trace like that, if you can see that, and you won't never see that's called a scatter trace. I think it's fairly evident to anybody who's ever been on a pressure mat that most good players. Well, there's no good player that will ever demonstrate a scatter trace. In fact, you can't get a person. This is an interesting test, and it's a fun bet. Get a good golfer. There's a lot of great players on joining us today. Try to do a scattered trace. You can't do it, but you're
I
going to
love that challenge. I love that challenge. I would love for everybody to try that.
When we were developing Boditrak, our goal, in my opinion, a true certification is being able to replicate every trace. I give everybody a caveat though. If you can replicate every trace, but not be able to replicate the scatter trace, you still get certified.
And that's okay. I can replicate the scatter trace for you.
Well, I actually don't think you're better than you say, but I get it.
That's funny. Jim, we're going to get to drills. Don't worry. Jim Altamirano's already asking for drills. That's what he does in the afternoons after he plays golf.
I want to get to how close are we to slide 7? I want to get braver.
I know. She's moving. She's going. We're only 20 minutes in.
That's okay.
Slow down, Terry. Okay, what's the next slide, Anna?
Game on today.
Okay, I had everybody that reached out and asked for Boditrak basics. One of the main questions was, what are the norms? And I know that there's a million different shapes and sizes, and a million different strengths, a million different types of golfers, but can you talk to COP norms?
And yes. And so thanks for asking. Let's get through this once. Please record this well. I never want to say it again. Just kidding. All right. So what's cool is that, and Mandy sent over, and Anna and Kelly and everybody sent over a list of questions that they'd like to address tonight. And they broke it into categories of men, ladies, junior boys, and junior girls. And the answer for all of them is the same. And we've seen this over and over and over. And what gave us a competitive edge is that I was allowed to go out on tour for nearly 3 years and just collect data and see how the best players stacked up against sort of the average golfer. Well, it turns out, number one, key pressure point at address, 55-60 on the lead side. So you want to have 55-60% of your pressure on the lead side. That's the lower number on the left-hand side where it says 55-45. What's interesting is that in European countries, in particular, where there's a lot of wind, like in the UK, and even over in Texas, like even Manitoba, where it's really windy, where I'm from, you're going to see players set up with more pressure than even 55. They might set up 60, 65 even on the lead side. I've seen higher. But we've never seen a touring pro that's won a tournament set up 60-40 on the trail side, which is how I was taught early on in my years when I was going to school, University of Miami. So it's interesting to get old timers like me on the pressure mat for the first time. You'll find that they set up with more pressure on their trail side than they do on their lead. But the modern golfer, key pressure point number one, all set up 55-60 on the lead side.
Okay, so just to be clear, I'm looking at this chart. I'm opening my V1 Pro Mobile and I see this new cool chart with my feet as the pressure. I'm looking for norms, and it looks like 55 is the percentage on the bottom left of the graph. And you're saying that number should be between 55 and 60.
Yeah, and it can be higher. Depends on the types of conditions that you play within. There was a question about now. Are we on to the next pressure point?
Yeah, so you can move on to the next norm. This is the next norm for the lead arm parallel.
Okay, so when the lead arm is parallel on the way back, that pressure dot should be moving forward. Okay, so when the lead arm is parallel to the ground on the way back, by that time, the white dot, that COP trace, is already moving forward. So there was a question that I saw that I glazed at there. So in some players, as soon as they take the club back, they've got their pressure to their trail heel already, and the pressure is already beginning to move forward. When that white dot moves forward, I call that the pressure transition. In other words, that pressure is beginning to move forward. The earlier the pressure transition, it's a good thing. If it's too late, like the number 2 pressure flaw for old guys like me is we don't get pressure to the lead side quick enough. We keep that pressure hanging back too long. So that when the lead arm is parallel to the ground on the way back, That's key pressure point number 2. Now, how much pressure do you get to the trail side depends on the length of the club. The shorter the club, the less pressure. So for a wedge, 9, 8 might be 55, 60. For a 7, 6, 5 might be 60, 65, 70. And up to a driver, you might get 80 to 90 on the trail side. But at pressure transition, when that lead arm is parallel to the ground on the way back, all great players, that white dot's moving forward. Top amateurs, top great, all the touring pros that we've ever seen that have won a PGA Tour event that we've had the privilege of recording their data, it's moving forward quite early. Andy Plummer, Stack and Tilt, I would presume, and I've seen a lot of their players' traces, they'll get that pressure moving to the lead side quite quickly. But now pressure key point number 3, at pressure transition, counterbalance, you will have 55, 60 into your trail heel. And this is the major difference between an amateur and a professional. This is probably the most significant thing that we learned is that at pressure transition, when the lead arm is parallel to the ground, a good player, a tour player will have 55, 60 or more in their trail heel to offset the weight of their arms and their forces going forward towards impact. Any questions on that?
Say that one more time. So lead arm parallel.
Lead arm parallel to the ground on the way back. I call that pressure transition. That's become quite common word to use now. When the lead arm is parallel to the ground on the way back, that white dot, that center of pressure, is already moving forward for a good player. At pressure transition, the amount of pressure that you get to the trail side depends on the length of the club. A wedge, 55, 60 is more than fine. Mid iron, long iron, 65, 70, that's about normal. Driver, 80, 90. So at pressure transition, the amount of pressure that you've got to your right side, if you're a right-handed golfer, the trail side, your left side, if you're a left-handed golfer, the trail side, either way, will depend on the length of the club. But at pressure transition, David Lee, Gravity Golf from Arkansas, wrote a book talking about counterbalance, counterfall, he called it. And what he was referring to is that your arms have a mass, and that mass moving forward towards impact, you better have more pressure on your heels to offset that. And that's been true. That's the second thing we learned. First thing we learned, well, that's the third thing we learned. The first thing we learned was address 55, 60. That was completely different than what we had seen growing up as a golfer in the 80s, 90s, and even the early 2000s. All the touring pros set up larger on the lead side. Pressure transition occurred early for great players and great amateurs too. That white dot went forward really early. In some cases, as soon as the club was taken back, the golfers had already obtained pressure transition, meaning they got to the designated percentages there to the trail side, but they all demonstrated a counterbalance, which was 55, 60 in the trail heel. That's significant because if you don't do that, the number one pressure flaw is too much pressure in the toes. And if you don't have counterbalance, you're going to get too much pressure in your toes.
Okay, got it. I totally get it. Terry, do you off the top of your head know, we've got people asking to see this live. Do you have a tour player in mind that Anna has in her pocket that we can show that?
Right there.
Let me see. I've asked her if she's got that. She's gonna.
And you can see by Emiliano Grillo, he's gonna. When Jake and I saw this trace, we were at the I forgot the name of the tournament in Boston, but regardless, he went from he went straight to his trail toe into his trail heel, then went and then he shifted, and this is really cool, where he shifted his pressure clockwise. Amateurs will shift their pressure counterclockwise, where they're getting their pressure in their toes, so they're accelerating through their toes, which is the braking mechanism. Great players like Emiliano Grillo, all great players will accelerate through their heels. Toes are the brakes, heels are the accelerators, your ankles are the shock absorbers and the propulsion system, and that is correct. And KK, who's on screen here with us, she's a biomechanic and a good friend of ours down in California. I've never had anybody cut me down on this, and I'm an open book. I mean, if I say something wrong, a lot of people are going to jump on it. And that's a decade of talking about it. The toes are the brakes, heels are the accelerator. All great players accelerate through the heels. I remember James Hong when we were learning and sharing how to use pressure mapping. He was telling me about a European fence master that was teaching people how to fence to push from their trail heel, their back heel. And I picked up on that and I started researching that. In fact, that was true. you do not accelerate through your toes effectively. You can do it. It's like driving down the highway with one toe tapping on the brakes. My dad loved doing that to scare the heck out of us. But acceleration, you're going to be accelerating through your trail heel to your lead side.
Okay, we don't have that one teed up. Anna doesn't have it, but do you have, is there one from the Jamie Sidlowski, one of the long drivers?
What,
No?
what do you want to see?
I just want to see, I want to show that moving, you know, before the club goes.
Show Berkshire.
Berkshire. Anna, see if you can find Berkshire. While she looks for that really quick, I'm going to make sure we covered all these questions. Jeff, I think we covered the question, yes, when we move to the second slide. Alejandro, yes, we covered that with the different clubs. Larry Hill, I will have my team make a note that you're looking for a pressure mat owner in Kansas City. Okay, David McManus, is that static COP or the initial dynamic pressure?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Can you say that again to me?
I don't understand that question either. David says it was like 10 minutes ago, so we might be a little late. Is that the static COP or the initial dynamic pressure? I don't totally understand that question. David, if you could elaborate a little bit. Kelly, did you get us, I mean, Anna, did you get us a video to show moving?
I think I understand the question.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Okay. No, it's the dynamic. Okay, no, you can start off with more pressure on your right side. On a dynamic basis, most golfers will have kind of like we used to call it forward press. I like to call it a pressure bump now. And, you know, as you know, I'm looking for new ways to help beginners play golf, and I've been really hit on this one. I call it golf dance, where it's a left, right, left, and or a tap, you know. But I used to own a company called Jazz Golf, so I like music, and I've been trying to find people find their natural beat and rhythm. I found there's 3 patterns that are really effective. But to answer that question, you know, it's not a static COP trait. You know, you definitely don't want to be in a static position. No good golfer. This is really, really cool. Ben Hogan, we got some great clips of Hogan, and he tap danced. I bet he was a good dancer. Bob Toski was a great dancer. I mean, he really is, and he still is, and he's a great guy. But great golfers have got great feet. I posted one with Brad Faxton, and everybody criticized me because they said, well, he didn't hit all that well. Well, maybe so, but no, you do not want to be static. Your feet are going to move around a little bit, and that's where the DVFs are really good. I've been reluctant to talk about dynamic vertical forces up until we joined up with V1 more permanently in the last year or so. Had tons of information on it, but I didn't want to confuse people. The trace is really where it's at. How you get there can be 100,000 different ways, but the trace is the bottom line. It's like, okay, a lot of ways to make money. I can sell pressure mats. I can sell houses. I can sell real estate. I can sell cars. Doesn't matter how you get there. Bottom line is how much cash you got in your bank. And that's what the trace is.
Yep. Okay, Anna, did you pull us a video? I just want to show really quickly, moving to the lead side so fast for a tour player. Let's see if she's got us one. Nothing in my V1. Okay, so she doesn't have that. But that's okay.
I didn't say I was a good dancer, Banksy, but
I know I had to call that. You know, Terry, though, someone, when you guys did the webinar with Richard and Jake, one of you said, this stuck with me. A few things stick with me. One is toes are the brakes, heels are the accelerators. But when you're like when you like do that step drill and you're like getting power and sort of generating, like winding up power. And I love seeing that on my pressure mat. I love seeing it going, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, it almost is like a visualization of that dancing, which is generating power in the ground. That's what I sort of think of it like.
I've lived on the golf course pretty much all my life, from Winnipeg to Charlottetown to Florida. Almost always lived on a golf course, and I live on a golf course right now. I'm 100 feet from the fourth tee deck at Belvedere. I don't play too much out there, but you watch people frozen over the ball because they don't know what to do. They don't know how to start their backswing. You know, Hogan said, you know, hands pull the arms pull the shoulders pull the hips, the hips pull the legs. He was right. So hands back, legs down. Where the opposite, it's legs, hips, shoulders, arms, and hands at impact. That's true. But what Hogan didn't have access to, which we do, it's the feet that move before the hands. And I've spent countless hours taking some really high definition pressure mapping systems that we've got. We have some really interesting medical software that will allow us to actually measure the dynamic load cell on each square inch or whatever size of cell that we are testing that week. And we've been able to isolate it basically down to the lead toe. The lead toe is where the pressure starts to begin. But does it commence from the right side to the lead side? It can. But
Nice.
the lead toe pushes the pressure to the trail side before the hands are activated. That's a fact.
Okay. All right, let's move on. I know we want to get to slide 7, and we're having a bunch of people say that there's a bunch of documents that all the old, really good golfers were also great dancers.
I like that. Yeah.
Snead, Hogan. Yeah, I like it too. And Greg, yeah, we're going to do a drawing for the iPad and the iPad tripod that I love to sell and promote with the V1 Pro Mobile. We'll do that in probably 10 minutes. And yes, Bob Grissett, he wrote some books. You guys go read Bob Grissett's books. He's a genius.
Yeah, read it.
Okay. Where's our next slide? We want to show slide 7, I think is where we were at.
This is a good slide.
Okay. So this is the third, and this is percentage norms for impact. This is
impact. Okay. Let's just get this straight. In an iron, you're always going to see, 80 to 100. Where you're going to see, not this number is when we talk about a massively long hitter, if they have a Z trace. But the truth is they get a lot of pressure to the lead side so early that they and the ball is on a tee. So what they do to generate dynamic loft is they pull back. They hammer the pressure into the lead toe and they pull back and up and creating the dynamic loft. And that trace, that it'll look like the pressure trace is moving backwards. But as we saw with Berkshire and the absolute world champions long drivers, their center of mass and pressure move forward at impact. So it's like a double tap where they go pressured from the trail heel, lead side, pull back and go forward again. And there's a really interesting thing in the DVFs that I'm going to show you today that I'm telling you is a fairly recent discovery that's completely overlooked by all our competitors. Don't know why it wasn't noticed. I didn't pay attention to it, but we found it. And I'm going to show you something here in the next little while. I promise.
Awesome.
This will be.
Okay, next slide, Anna. Okay, we have 3. Actually, do you want to talk about your slide first, or do you want to talk about the 3 common traces? I've got scatter trace and Z trace, figure 8 and linear.
Well, this scatter trace, it can look like anything. And this is typically what your beginner golfer is going to look like. The easiest, when you see this, you've got money in the bank. All you got to do is get them to do a step drill where they go from the trail side to the lead side. I call that the 1-2 move. And it's just going to straighten out. Or they can do a Nicholas drill where they lift the lead heel off the ground to get more pressure to the trail side. And then they just go forward by hammering down the lead side. But step drill typically is the best drill. If they can't get their foot all the way to the back, you can start it halfway. Just get that pressure moving forward, back and through. And it really works well.
You call this the money trace, yeah?
I call this a money trace because when a pro sees this, if you're giving lessons, that's a customer.
You can fix something very easily.
Yeah, it's immediate. I mean, this is the 21st century, and we're not used to waiting for a long time to get our meals and our results. We want immediate feedback, immediate results. This is an automatic money in your pocket.
Okay, and the step drill is perfect for it. We'll show it and get to it in a minute. Okay, the next trace, Anna, figure 8.
Figure 8 is really just backing up and going forward prior to impact. And this is Justin James, I believe. And it is. And the Justin James can really hit it a long way. This would be better demonstrated than the vertical forces. This is the double tap where he goes left, right, and then just prior to impact, he goes left, right, left again. And it's really putting on the brakes, not having enough and there's a restriction on the lead side, so he can't quite get there, so he moves back, but they compensate and move forward. If that COM is not moving forward and center of pressure at the same time, prior to impact, the results aren't good.
Okay, and one more, and everyone watching, there are more traces than what we're featuring today. This is absolutely the basics tonight. So we're only showing 3, the scatter trace, which is probably what most beginner golfers are going to show you. This figure 8 trace, which is kind of the mean ground, I guess. And then the linear, which is going to answer hopefully a question about the common trace for the straightest drivers. So we can see the linear slide, Anna, and I'm assuming that Terry, you're going to mention this is where we see all the tour players.
Okay, so actually this is Corey Connors from Canada, and a great friend of mine, Derek Ingerman. I know a lot of people know Derek. He's been traveling the world now as the Canadian Olympic coach for, this will be his, I think, 7th or 8th year. I saw this down with Corey, and Derek and I grew up together. He's a lot younger than me, but he sort of grew up when I was playing my good golf in Manitoba. And he asked me to come over, and I got over there, and he said, "What do you think?" I think this guy's going to be a complete champ. And I'm not saying it to brag about my prediction. He did it all by himself. I didn't do anything. I never really talked to the guy too much, but he's a heck of a nice fella. As you know, he won the Shell 2 years ago, qualified for the last tournament to go to Augusta. Got onto a private jet, probably the first time I ever was on a private jet, and woke up the next day. He was on tee with Jack Nicklaus and Gary Player. Watching golf, and then he went, and they all talked to him. But Corey has demonstrated not only perseverance, but this linear trace is basically what I saw with, first time I saw the linear trace done really well was by Bo Weekley. And then I could go on and on. This is just something that a turned pro will demonstrate over and over. What's also really, really cool is that Corey accelerates just from his trail heel to the lead side. You can see the flow is underneath. It's a little tricky to see it there, but on the right-hand side, you'll see that trace is actually going to his left heel. Corey has an exceptional trace. This trace is something that we see on the irons of all tour winners, and it is not a short trace. It is the DVFs, the dynamic vertical forces, will determine the length that you hit this ball. You can have a very long hitter with this trace. It just depends on when that final push from the trail side to the lead side occurs and how hard they slam on the brakes. As Banksy, if you're still listening, I've traveled in your car when we were playing the Canadian Tour together. Sometimes you slam on those brakes, you see something that I don't see, and boom, I'm through the windshield. And that's kind of like what the brakes are. The hands are, they don't move all that fast, 14, 15, 16 miles an hour. I'll defer to the experts there. But if I can generate 1 or 2 more miles of hand speed by hammering on the brakes, man, that equates to a lot of distance and yardage.
It sure does. It sure does. He says that absolutely never happened. I don't know.
Maybe it was me driving.
Pete is asking for about a certification. And Pete, there is a Boditrak certification on the Boditrak website. However, our V1 team is working on a new certification, I think, right, Terry, with you?
Yes.
Okay. So I would just suggest that you continue to engage with our Tuesday traces, and soon we'll have that ready and it'll be pushed out. I'm sure Kelly has an announcement when they finish it. But initially you can go and access the certification in the golf portion of the Boditrak website. Okay. What is our next slide, Anna?
Okay, these are the 3 common pressure flaws. I've already stated them, but these are, this will be 95% or more of your lesson book. The one thing that gives me an advantage over some of our competitors is I teach on a daily basis. I have always had a studio. I still have a studio. We have a lab, and we have a driving range too as well. But the number one pressure for everybody is too much pressure in the toes during your swing. Why is that a bad thing? It means you're accelerating through your braking mechanism. Typically, you're coming over the top. Backing up in irons, I think it should be fairly evident. But this is especially prevalent in juniors where their clubs are too long and too heavy for them. So they try to create dynamic loft because they're competitive by nature, and they swing in such a way that they usually get up into their toes to clear. Club's too long, and they're backing up, and that can cause your spine to be in a tilt. And I just saw a funny note from Trish, but the backing up in irons is definitely a problem. It's not good. And just think of throwing a punch. If you're going to back up just prior to making impact with somebody's nose, which would be a good thing in my case, so you could save me from getting a broken nose. But if you backed up too much, you're not going to have any power in that punch. In fact, you want your center of mass and COP going forward. Pressure too slow to the lead side. That is definitely the problem that most golfers will have that are older like me. I was a pretty good player, and I still this is something that I work on every day. I don't like when that pressure is too slow to the lead side. Everything's just falling behind, and you just can't make good contact. My whole goal with using pressure mapping was to free up the hands by focusing in on where your feet are, because my hands, most people's hands are naturally better than you think. If you fall down, for example, what do you do? First thing you do is put out your hands, unless you're nearly dead. So your hands are quite responsive. They're better than you think. And I deal with fall prediction analysis, fall prevention for elders. So I understand hands, not in the context of the golf so much, but I understand how fast they can react. And hands can react real well if your pressure is in a good spot, and that's the object of pressure mapping, in my opinion.
I would like to say to the hundreds of people that are still tuned in to watch us that Terry and I are here to support your golf business. Terry just said 95% of your students will have one of these 3 issues. I would like to also point out you cannot see them without a pressure mat. You cannot see your 95% of students that have these 3 common issues without the technology that Terry and I are telling you about. I think that is super important. I think when you see those 3 things that you can fix with this technology and make your students feel versus real and see it and believe it and take it with you and improve it every week is pretty powerful. So I just wanted to say that out loud. Okay.
You asked me a question about league golf, and I said, there's nothing I don't like about David Lee. Everything he does, I like. He's completely off the shelf. He is one of the brightest and the most intelligent golf coaches, instructors I ever met. And I could tell you a story about it, but we don't have enough time because I want to get through. But I do like all of his drills, and he's put a lot of thought into it, and he's just amazing. Next.
Greg, thank you for the question. Yes, these mats are absolutely used in the home studio. Jim Altamirano is with us tonight. He's had one for a very long time. And so yes, we sell them to the home studio user. Feel free to email me directly and I will send over pricing for the mat and the software. Really quickly, Terry, I'd like to give away an iPad and a tripod. My team has drawn a random winner. Everybody that was registered tonight, even if you didn't actually tune in, they took the list of registrants and they did a random drawing. And Larry Hill has won an iPad and the iPad tripod. Larry, thank you for registering. Thanks for joining us on our 10th Tuesday Trace. And now I'm so excited to let Terry talk about some 4D graphics. Where is our slide?
What Ed Ryan sent in, Ed Ryan's a good friend of mine. What did he say?
To get that beginning golfer 80% on lead foot at impact is incredible for their advancement. I also saw hash dancing and it ain't pretty.
For those that don't know who Ed Ryan is, because there's everybody probably does, Ed's the top guy at Cabot Links and Cabot Trail. A dear friend of mine, Ed, was one of the top jazz golf customers in all of Canada. I'm used to from Antigonish, Nova Scotia, originally from Cape Breton, a hell of a mean, tough hockey player and a great golf pro, great instructor. Dear friend, Ed, thanks for watching in, and I mean that, and we'll get together soon.
And I would love to see a video of Terry dancing in the view
it's bad. It's bad. It's bad. But it's at a certain beat. It's my beat, and that's the goal, right? Got to find your own beat.
Okay, let's move on to our next slide.
Okay, so the drills.
Wait. Don't we want to show your video?
I want to see the one with Steve Cox, but let's go.
Let's do the Steve Cox video.
Yeah, come on.
Anna, can you pull up Steve Cox video? That's the one Terry sent this afternoon.
I promise this is worth waiting for.
Yeah, we got to have Terry talk to that.
This is really cool. All right, so Steve Cox, now, he's let the tape roll till you get to about the, just very close to the velocity chart. So Steve Cox is a good friend of everybody's. He was on this show with Mandy a couple times, a couple weeks ago. Now you're going to see the, now we're going to slow it down a little bit. Now, stop for just a second, please, if you don't mind. Now, this is really cool because if you go back to before the hand start, Braven, this is for you because that arms together is this kind of dig. Let's go back a little bit before the hand start, please. Before the hand start moving back. Let's go right back a little bit. Now, I want you to pay attention to the yellow line there. Is the yellow the lead there? I can't read it. The yellow is the trail or the lead? Doesn't matter. Move, watch the vertical force in the lower graph there. Watch the vertical force increase before the hands move. It moves up. You see that spike up before the bottom? It moves up prior. It moves up prior. Now stop for a sec. Now when the lead arm is parallel to the ground on the way back, you're going to see that secondary spike. This gets really interesting if you want to talk about vertical forces. There's 3 spikes about to occur. Now, what do you think the length of time is from lead arm parallel to the ground on the way down and impact? Probably not very much, like, not very much, a 15th of a second. All right, so now just advance it slowly to that next yellow peak, the yellow peak, right there. Okay, so now you're pushing from your trail side vertically. You're pushing down your trail side. Now, what does Cox do wrong here? I'll tell you what he does wrong. His lead side break, that blue line, go to the blue line, go to the peak of the blue vertical force. Now stay right there. Where's impact? He's in front of it. He braked too late on the lead side. Now, if you don't follow me on that, I'll walk you through it again. This is how you use dynamic vertical forces, because now this is really cool, and I want to adjust my camera so you see this. Now, if you want to use dynamic vertical forces to teach a golfer, and there's 2 moves you can teach them. Now, there's many that you can teach. You do it any way you want. This is what I do to get them to work. Push on your right to your left. Boom. Hit the ball. Push on your right to hit your left. Or trail to your lead. Trail to the lead. Trail lead. Boom. And that's the simple step 1. It's the 1-2 move. Now, the real move is lead, trail, lead. Lead, trail, push, lead, break. Then there's a lead, trail, lead, trail, lead. Now, that's what Coxey's trying to do here. Now, if you go back to that yellow line, someone asked to review this again, and I'll be glad to do it. Let's go right to the beginning, and then you can save this, and I'm going to go very, very slow. Okay, so now you're going to see that yellow line. Go ahead, advance it slowly. The yellow line is going to go up. It went up prior to the hands going back. Now, keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Now keep going. Now look at that yellow line on the trail side. Take it to the peak of that yellow line. Now he's at lead arm parallel. Now stop right there. Stop. Go back to that peak. Go back to that peak in the yellow line, the trail side. Keep on going back. Go back to that peak right there. Now look, this is critical. If you want to understand how to use dynamic forces, this is the critical junction. That you will have a slight break on your right, before you break on your lead side, which is that blue line. You will push once again from your trail side. That's what Coxey's doing there. And Braven, that's what your drill is. That's what your drill is trying to facilitate. It's that little extra push from the trail side. That's what Berkshire does. And that's what every single guy who's won a long drive championship in the last, well, I've only got actually 3 of the last 5 years. I think of the last 6 years. But that little extra vertical bump is what moves the center of mass forward and the COP forward prior to impact. Now, if you take me to the blue line, Anna, the blue vertical spike, watch Coxey's hands. They're past impact. He blew it. Now, he's my good friend, and he's probably watching. He didn't blow it. He's actually catching this information in correlation to 3D using gears. So Steve, now what Steve's done here so well, and I said, and this is why the V1 Studio is so good, you can line up all the charts, COP, velocity, and the verticals. Now, what's really, really cool, once you get into this, you're going to notice in the velocity chart, now stay where you are, Anna, don't back up, but you see how that spike at peak velocity goes up and goes down, but never touches the baseline? That means he slid laterally through the ball. This is not hard stuff to figure out. That's the first step I had today. I feel bad.
I'm super impressed, Terry. You and I both will get a raise because we've only said one cuss word so far.
That's a slip. All right. So, but I get excited when I see this because this is the first time you're going to see a correlation. Steve slid through the ball. So that white line, and I got a pen that's pointed to it, but that white line just to the left in the velocity chart, it never hits the baseline. That means He realized that he was stuck and he slid through the ball, which is exactly precisely what he did, because right then and there, you can see in the DVFs at that blue line, and he's breaking the hardest at that point. He's realized he's passed the ball. He's not optimal. So somebody asked me a very complicated question about what is the optimal pattern for the DVFs. And I'm going to give you a very challenging, there isn't. Because when you break relative to you is your tempo. When you break on your lead side and how hard you break is deep, it depends on your strength. Like I've got strong legs. David Banks, Ed Ryan, the guys that are watching this, I know Braven, the guys that I know that are watching this that have sent in some comments. You guys have got strong legs. You could just jump on your lead side and stay there, but the average golfer would have to, they'd have to move back and you know, have backup. But this is a very cool example that Steve Cox, PGA National, sent me, because it shows everything. It shows the trace. It shows the sliding through and the velocity chart, because it doesn't hit the baseline. And it shows the timing. Now, if you don't mind, and this is the last thing I'll say, so just back it up to that yellow peak, please, where it's trail. Just back it up to the yellow trace on the DVF, the lower charts. Now, the timing from there to the break, that's called the release factor, and that's critical. That's absolutely critical. That little extra break. I said release factor, I misspoke. That's called the break effect. The final break time to impact determines how far you're going to hit the ball. I don't care what anybody tells me.
That's all right, and tell me what you mean by break. When you say break, what do you mean by that?
Okay, so as we could see in this video, Mandy, the blue line represents his go to the blue line, go to the lead side, break, keep on advancing it. That's when Steve had maximum pressure down on his lead side. That's when the total of all the forces were the highest. So that's when he broke too late. He broke after impact. That's
you want that break at impact.
No, just in and around. You want a millisecond prior to impact. Not even a millisecond. It's that little do.
And so Terry, when you're talking, because everyone keeps seeing you, we keep doing this, and we're joking about it being dancing, but you keep talking, it's a drill. And I know that I'm setting you up, because it sounds like that's what he's doing, or what Coxie was trying to get the student to do, was get that forces going. So is there a step drill, or can we roll? Is that what you're talking about? Is it the double tap? What is the drill that we're trying to get to?
Thanks, Braven. And somebody just asked, would you get a scatter trace person to try to, you know, it's not easy to do a linear trace. Let's just get that right out of there. If you've got one, good for you. I'm trying to understand how you do it. I played a little bit of tour golf. I played really high level amateur golf. I wasn't the greatest player on tour, but I wasn't bad. Finished, almost won a couple. I got there. Played some PGA Tour events. I was a good player, but to have a linear trace, trust me, it's not easy. It's a combination of counterbalance and timing when you move from the pressure to the trail to the lead side, and knowing when to break on your lead side. How do you get all that? Well, the best drill for that is the step drill, because it forces you to get pressure to your trail side, and it forces you to break. Otherwise, you're going to just fall down. Gary Player had an interesting move when he was under pressure. He just walked through it. I think the one person I'd like to talk to, if I had a chance, is to talk to Mr. Player and say, I'd like to ask him personally, why did you walk through the shot? And I'm going to bet you my last dollar that, I think someone just said he should have posted up earlier on the left side. Yeah, in the case of that video, yes. But with Mr. Player respect, I think he may have felt that he probably backed up under pressure, and he never wanted to back up, because that would cause you to hit the ball fat or hit some funny shot. And he realized that by walking through it, he would, under pressure, it benefited him. And that's a great drill to do too, where you walk through the shot. So if you got a guy backing up with their irons, I call it the Player drill for Mr. Player. That works real well. Step drill is excellent. And did you know what's funny? I didn't know how important Mandy was in my life, but she leaves for 2 seconds and I feel lost.
I was going to share my screen and do the drill with you, but.
Yeah, no, that's okay. You can do it. If you, with V1, I don't. By the way, there's no PJ show. I've been told.
I know there. So let's get to a couple of these questions because it's almost
Sure.
8.
Right.
The V1 and pressure mat be at the PGO in January. So that's a funny question because I'm going to go to the PGA show, even though my team's not because they're not holding it. No, I'm joking. I can't imagine not being there, but we are going to host a virtual summit. We're going to actually do it a few weeks before the PGA show. But Ken, please send me an email. Terry and I have tons of resources, and we're kind of all over the place with trying to set up demos of the mat. So send us an email. Larry Hill was our winner tonight. We ran out of time to show some drills, but Terry and I will provide some links to a step drill and the double tap drill, which I think is super new and cool that Terry has a great video of. Terry, what else basics that you want to leave the hundreds of people that are still tuned in with us tonight?
Well, I just want to say thanks because, a lot of times we've been just trying to entertain. Today, we were trying to get right to the point. And Mandy, I want to thank you for being a great host, as always. All the V1 team, Anna, Kelly, whoever else is on in the background. The secret to success with pressure mapping, I asked them to post a funny video that I bought some ancient wood today. It was 250 plus. They didn't post it. We didn't have time. But, we've been teaching golf the same way for basically since it started. Some great, innovators, I won't name them because there's so many of them. What's funny is that Boditrak proved to them when I showed it that they were right. They had it right. We didn't create anything. All we did was help give people a tool that they could validate what they've been doing is correct all these years. And that's an amazing thing, Mandy. But we can make it faster. We can make it easier because the biofeedback that the V1 Boditrak gives its customers, it's just it's what people want today.
Yep.
It's not. It's just that we need it. It's like I'm not a teacher, but I'm a dad, and I have a student. It's in grade 9. I could just tell he was down, and so we just sat there and talked. We didn't do the golf stuff today. We just talked. I want to. How's your day? We talked about it. We talked because you can feel it. That's what kids need. They want the biofeedback. Now, I'm taking around the block, but I'm not. This is what people want today, and it's faster and it makes sense. I just want to thank everybody because this was a long session. And Jesus, can we do this a little earlier next time, Mandy?
I'm sorry, Terry, but it's when everyone's done teaching. I have to be able to get to their schedules. I'm sorry. I know. I really appreciate it. I've had so much fun working with you and thank you for your support. My email is, girls, can someone put my email down there for Greg Van Gorp, mandy.vonsee@v1sports.com. But Terry, thanks so much. It's been awesome. I love working with you.
I want to answer just 2 questions. Laurent, no, I would just go straight to the step drill, and I would just it'll take them to a lateral trace at worst right from the get-go. Debbie, really appreciate you hopping on. Debbie said one of the best teachers in all of Quebec forever. And guys, I'm out. And Mandy, thank you so much.
Thank you, Terry. I'll talk to you tomorrow morning.
Talk tomorrow.
Cheers.
Love you guys. See you later. Bye.
Yeah.